If Notion has ever made you feel overwhelmed and confused, you're definitely not alone. Today, my setup is fairly advanced, but it literally took me like 5 years to get to this point. And in this video, I want to show you the easiest way you can start organizing your life in Notion with no overwhelm. This setup is exactly the one I would show my best friend if they asked me where to start. I believe the best way to learn is not just learning the features, but actually building a real project and learning along the way. We'll literally start with a blank page in Notion and then cover all the foundations that you really need to know about. Pages, databases, relations between them, and rollups, creating and structuring templates, and even more advanced stuff like formulas and macro buttons. But more importantly, in the process, we're going to build a system that's simple, functional, and designed for real life. No skipping steps, no rushing through. Let's build it together. Keep in mind that you can grab your free template by clicking the link below. There is no need to enter an email or anything like that. Just click it and get it. But if you want to really learn this stuff, I would suggest you actually go through the video following along with me and doing all the steps, because that's really how you learn. So here we are looking at our brand new Notion workspace, nothing in it, just a button in the sidebar that says add new. Let's click that. And our first question is, where the hell do we even start? So we're trying to organize and optimize our lives, but do we bring in a Notion template that's about managing projects, a task tracker? Do we start from scratch? And if we do, then what should be the first page that we create? Now, I think we organize our lives in time cycles. What I mean by that is days and weeks and months. We kind of think in those terms. We plan, we execute, and then we reflect on how the cycle went, and we just start the whole thing over again. This is the backbone of all self-improvement. So this is exactly where I would start. And I think you start from lower level that all the lives are made up of, which is days, and then you kind of build up into weeks, and then you can go into higher level timeframes. So let's start with building up our days database and see where it goes from there. So let's click empty database and click new empty database here. And here we are. We have a new table. Let's call it days. Let's give it some nice little icon. We can search for something along the lines of calendar and pick this icon. So we already have this page on the left in our sidebar. It's in a table view by default, and we can start creating properties on our days right away. So far, it only has the name property, and you can see this little plus icon here. This is how you can add a new property. Another way to add a property is go to the settings of the database, click properties, and then you can add a property here, and you can see all the properties that you have so far. So for sure, we know that our days are going to have a date property to reference the actual date that it belongs to. So let's just add that. We can see there are all kinds of properties that we can create. We want to select a date. This is the name of the property. Date is fine in our case, and we can mess around with it a little bit. So for example, we don't really need a time format, so we can hide that. And that's pretty much it for the date. Now we can, just to play around, we can actually create a new entry in this newly created database. So let's hit new page. Okay, it prompts us to give it a name. We can actually input just the name of the current date. So let's pick the date property. So today is June 28th. So let's just name it June 28th, 2025. And now we've got a brand new entry in our database. And if we open this inside Peak, you can see that we have a page that's inside of a database. So every entry in the database is itself a page. So if we hit this button, we can open this page in full screen, or we can also command enter. So now we have this page opened in a full screen. You see that it prompts us to press enter to continue with an empty page, or we can create a template right away for our days. We are definitely going to be creating a template, but for now, let's just hit enter and start with a fresh page. We first build up some structure in here, and then we can extract it into a template later.
So what kind of structure should our days have? I would say we should design our templates for the days around the routines and rituals that you are planning to have. So for example, the routines that we want to cultivate with our days is planning our days, doing some morning data entry, and reviewing our days. Let's start with that. So let's add 2 sections to this template. We can bring up the commands menu by hitting slash, and you can see all kinds of things that we can add to our template, to our page. So first, we're going to need a couple of headings. So you can see there is a heading 1. You can also search this menu if you just start typing. So if you start typing something like heading, or even if you type something like H1 or H3. And also you're going to notice that here on the right, you have a little shortcut for this. So for example, if we erase the whole thing and we just type hash and then hit space, we're going to have heading 1. So let's have that. We're going to have our, let's call this section morning notes, and then let's have just an empty line, and then we're going to have our evening, let's call it evening reflection. Now let's make this a little prettier. So we can click, and if we search for actions, we can type something like background color, right? Or that would also be located here under the color menu. So let's give it a green background. Let's add some space here in the beginning. And then also let's add some kind of emoji to this just to make it look slightly nicer. So let's say sunrise, and this is fine. And then let's do the same here. And here we can type background just to make it a little quicker. And then also let's add something like night, moon, I guess is fine. Okay, so now we've got our basic structure and we want to be adding some properties to this day. We know that we are going to be entering some data in the morning and then doing some evening reflection and just reflecting on our day and also entering some data there. So first, let's just add a few properties that we definitely know we are going to need. Let's add a new property here. Let's select text. And we're going to call this property, let's call this actually morning notes. Let's give this one a little nice icon. Let's say pencil. Okay, so this is good. Then we can add another property. Let's call this focus. So this is also something we're going to be entering in the morning just to set our focus for the day. Let's give it another, let's search for rocket. Or let's actually not use rocket. Let's use something like target. Oh yeah, this is good. So target makes a lot of sense for focus. And let's see, this is for the morning. What are we going to be entering in the evening? Let's say we're going to be entering just like pros and cons for the day. So let's say we're going to have pros. That's good. And we can actually duplicate this property. Duplicate. And we're going to call this one cons. And give this an icon of minus. This is good. And we can also add, let's add one more. Let's call this lessons. Let's give this a graduation cap icon. This is also something we're going to be entering in the evening. So we're going to, in the morning, we're going to just do some kind of quick journaling for morning notes. And then we're going to set a focus for the day, which could be like 1 to 3 top items that you are planning to accomplish that day. And then at the end of the day, we're going to be reflecting on how the day went. We're going to highlight some of the pros for the day and some of the cons, and maybe draw some lessons from the day. We've added these properties here, but we know we want to be adding them here in the template. So we want to have this section be actually where we input the properties, meaning the data. And same goes for reflection. Well, this is where we learn how to create views of our databases. So we've created a new database when we created the days database, but now we can have different views that are pointing or representing this same database, but we can have those views as many times as you want across our entire workspace. And what you can do is just type view, and then you're going to see all kinds of views that you can create. So you can have a table view. This is what we saw by default created when we created a database. We can have a gallery view, a list view, and etc. So let's actually create a table view for now. And here you saw when we were creating a database, we picked new empty database, but now we actually don't want to be creating a new database. We want to search for days. And here we have our existing database. So this is what we want to be pointing to. And now you can see we have our inputs here, but now it looks like shit. So let's fix that. First of all, let's go to the triple dots here, and we can toggle the full width mode. So that's going to make it better right away. But also we see that not all these properties we want in our morning notes. Some of these properties we want in our evening reflection. So what we can do is we can just click on any property that we want to hide, like for example cons, and we want to hide in view, so it's gone. Same goes for pros, and same goes for lessons. So we just want to have our morning notes and our focus field. The date we actually also don't need because we have this name. So let's hide this one as well. And the name we probably would be hiding if we could, but we can't. So there's a core property called name. I mean, you can rename it, but by default it's called name. And every database entry should have this property, and you can't hide it in any view. So let's just leave it there. We can shorten it a little bit, and then we can drag these around to reorder them. So let's make morning notes a little wider and focus as well. Okay, so this is looking pretty good. A few extra things here. So for example, if we type a bunch of text here, you can see that it truncates. And in this case, we want to see the entire text. So we are going to click on this property and we are going to select wrap text. So now we see all the text. And we are going to need the same thing for our focus field. We can click wrap text here because the kind of focus that we're going to be entering is 3, maybe 2 bullet points of the main things that you want to be accomplishing for the day. So let's say thing 1, and then you can hit shift enter to go to the new line, and that would be thing 2. Okay, so this is how our focus field is going to look. To make this display a little nicer, we can also hide this name of the database because we kind of know that we are inside of days. So if we click the settings, go to layout, there's a show database title toggle, so we can turn that off. And then we can also click here and rename this view. And let's call this morning data and pick a nicer icon. So yeah, sun, or actually sunrise. How about that? This is looking good. And let's actually have a similar display for our evening reflection. Now we can click this button and hit Command C to copy the view. And then we can go here and press Command V. So now we have the same view in our evening, but this is a completely separate view, so we can modify this one. So let's call this evening reflection and then change the icon to this one. And then we can hide these, hide, but then how do we display all the properties that we need? You see it says show or hide properties, and then we can only bring up the ones that we want. So we want pros, cons, and lessons. This is what we want to be reflecting on at the end of the day. So let's again make them a little wider. So this is looking good. Let's add another property to our morning notes. And also we're going to see how to add a property that's not just a text field. So let's actually select a drop down, or what's called a select. Let's call this energy level. So let's say we want to be judging our energy level in the morning. That would be, let's pick this nice icon. And this is going to be a drop down or a select with different options. So let's call this high energy. Let's call it OK energy. We're going to have low energy, and let's say it's 0 energy if we're like completely sick or something. That's a pretty terrifying icon, but fine. So high energy, let's just rearrange them a little bit. Okay, and then we can also pick colors for them. So let's make high energy green because this is cool, nice. and yellow, orange, and red. So now if we hit this field, we can be selecting a property that's predefined. So let's say we were pretty high energy today. Okay, so let's rearrange this one and put it right in the middle and make it slightly narrower. So this is pretty good. We've got our morning nodes, we've got our energy level and our focus. And you also see now that all the properties that we've added, they are added to the top section as well. And we kind of don't want that. It looks cluttered. And since we're going to be entering our data here, we really don't need that. So if we go and hit this icon, we can go to property visibility and click always hide. When we do that, you notice that this little thing popped up here. So now we can, since we have some properties that are hidden, we can actually hit this button and it would not show them. So it would hide all the properties that we've marked as hidden. And of course, you still have access to them if you hit this button, so they appear again. But we actually don't want that. So let's click hide those properties. And we want to also hide pros, cons, and energy level, and morning nodes. And we can leave focus, and maybe it's super important for us, or maybe actually let's hide that as well. We just want to see the date. And just like we've added an icon to our entire days database, let's also add it to the individual day. And I think what would be really cool right now is if we could link each day to its respective week. So that way we can set the focus for the entire week, and then we can make sure that the focus for each day actually advances our weekly goals. And it would also, like, we can easily imagine it would be really cool to do a weekly review and then see the entire collection of the days that make up that week. So let's actually add that. We already know how to do it. So let's hit add new, hit empty database. Let's call it weeks. We can give it slightly different icon, and let's start adding properties. So we can hit this one. We do know that it's also going to have a date property. We also don't need the time, and let's create a new week. Let's see what dates it's going to have. So in this case, let's make it a range. So the way you do that is by hitting the first date, and then you can hold shift and hit the second date. So this would select this as a range. And if you wanted to do that without a shortcut, you can see this toggle here for the end date, and then you would be able to select this separately. So this is pretty good. It's going to be a week from June 23rd to June 29th, and we can actually call it something like that, June 23-29, 2025. So this is looking good. Let's open this up. And now let's create a days property. And this is where we're going to learn a very important lesson in Notion, and that's how we actually link databases together. So this is one of the coolest things Notion does, is that you can create relational properties. So let's actually do that. We select relation, and here we can see we can relate this database to itself or to days. So in this case, let's select days. We want to have no limit, and we do want to toggle this property. So we want to have a two-way relation. What that means is that when we go on the days property, we're going to see a property that relates to weeks. And when we go to the weeks, we're going to see a property that relates to days. If we didn't toggle this, then we would go inside of our weeks. We would see all of our days, but then in the days database, we wouldn't see any relation to the weeks. So let's toggle this one. And here it asks us for the name of the property that we're going to actually set on the days. We're going to call it week. And we're going to call it singular week because each day can only be related to one week. But on the weeks, it's going to be called days plural because a week is going to have multiple days. So let's click add relation. So this is looking good. And now we can click here and select our day. So let's see what happens. Okay, this one is selected. You can see that now this week references this day. We can actually click this one. It's going to open the day. And let's also command enter on this one to go back to our day. And what we are going to notice is that now every day in our days database now has a week property. That's the one we created when we enabled two-way relation. And now we can reference this week from our days. Let's go back to our newly created week, Command Enter, and let's make this page look a little nicer. So similar to our days, we want to have certain rituals that are tied to our weeks, and this is, we want to be planning our weeks and we want to be reviewing our weeks. You kind of see the pattern, right? We want to be reviewing our months and planning our months. Same for the days, same for the weeks. Actually, this is the same pattern that happens, across all the cycles. So let's start by creating our first section, H1. Let's call this planning, and let's have another one called reflection. Now we can do the same pattern and call this, in fact, we can search for select green background. Let's pick some nice icon for this one, green background. And for reflection, let's select something like a trophy. And similar to what we did inside of days, let's create a view of the weeks database right inside this template to make sure we are able to set our focus for the week. So let's hit view. We want a table view. We want to search for weeks. Select this one. It's going to be a new view. And again, let's go here and select the full width layout so it looks a little nicer. In this case, we don't need to be seeing the days, the dates. The name is fine. Let's actually also add an icon to this one. Okay, now looking better. Let's go to layout so we can hide the database title, and let's call this weekly planning. The target is looking good. And let's add a property. We can add property right from here. Let's call this focus. So this is going to be focus, similar to what we had inside of days, but this is our weekly focus. Okay. So now we kind of have our weekly planning set up right inside of our week. And let me come up with just some focus that we can add here. We want to wrap text. So this is our imaginary focus for the week. We can start hiding these properties right away. So let's hide focus from here. And what's really cool that we can do now is imagine that we had this week starting out and we've set this focus for the week. So what I would imagine being really nice is that every day that we create, when we're setting the focus for the day, that we will see this weekly focus immediately in this view. This would be really cool because when we're setting a focus for the day, it would make sense that it should ideally advance our weekly goals. So how can we do that? Let's add a new property, and now we're going to learn yet another amazing feature of Notion called rollups. So let's select rollup, and a rollup is basically a property that's going to pull a value from a related database. So here we can select the relation that we want to be pulling values from. So in this case, it's a week. And the target property that we're going to be pulling is our focus. And we don't need any calculations. We're just going to click show original. And let's call this rollup a weekly focus. And we want to also wrap the text for this one as well. Let's make it slightly larger. Okay, and let's put this one here. So now this is looking pretty nice. Every day that we create, in the morning when we're setting our intentions for the day, we're going to see our weekly focus, which is really cool because we are going to see, okay, this is what's planned for the week. So let me set the focus. Let me actually make up a focus for the day as well. Let's just enter this one. That makes a lot of sense. Let's say we have our quarterly call with a client. We want to prep some notes and we want to update some email copy. So this is kind of looking reasonable for a focus for the day. Let me actually make up some more data just so we can populate this template. So let's say these were our morning notes. Let's say our cons for the day were these. And you can see we want to be wrapping this properties here, these properties here as well. Wrap text. So let's say our cons were this, and let's say we didn't have any lessons for the day. Our day is looking pretty good. This is a solid template, and this one we can hide as well. But now we actually want to be creating a template. So we're ready to rock and roll and create some more days using this same structure. So how do we create a template that we can use over and over again? Let's go back to our days database. And here you can see right next to the new button, there's a little caret. And here you can see all the templates that you have, which of course we have none, but there is a create new template button. And let's open this one in full page. This is the new template for the days database. And what we can do is here you see we have days. I can command click on this one, and this is going to open a new tab with days. And of course we can go to our actual day that already has that structure. And the reason is we can just copy the whole thing, click, and then drag to select the whole thing. I click Command C and I go to our first tab. This is our template, and I click Command V to enter it here. Let's go and select full width for our template as well. We're going to be adding the name ourselves for now and date as well, but let's also add an icon so it automatically gets that. So this is looking pretty good. Let's actually try this out. So let's go to our days. One thing that we need to do is if we click and see our template, we have these dots here, so we can click and make this, set this template as a default. So instead of having a blank page as a default template, we can use our newly created template as a default. So we can hit for all views and days. Nice. So now this template that we created is a default. So now when I hit this new button, you can see that it uses our newly created template. So let's hit Command Enter to go to this page. And let's imagine that we wanted to create a page for yesterday. So we have our June 28th. Let's create June 27th. Okay, let's call it June 27th, 2025. Now, you can already notice a problem. Right here in these views, we're not filtering them at all. So now we just added a new day, and here in our morning notes and in our evening reflection in our database views, since there is no filtering, we see both days. We see yesterday and we see today. But what we really want to see is just the today's date, the date of the current day. So let's hit filter. And what we can do is select date. And then here we can say start date is, and here we can have a drop down and hit today. So now we only see today. Let's hide this filtering and go to evening reflection and add the exact same filter. Date, not this week, but is today. Good. So now you can see there is only today's date. Now you might say that this is actually the day for yesterday, so this is June 27th, but we are filtering for today and we get June 28th here, which is kind of not right. And you would be correct in that, and we are actually going to fix this later. But for now, this is going to work because really you're going to be working in the current day. So if we open June 28th, then if we set our filters here, date is okay. And same here, filter date is today, then we're going to be pretty good. And then we're going to be working in this template for the rest of the day. And then when we create tomorrow, then we're going to see tomorrow, etc. But this is still suboptimal that if you go to a past date, then the data that you're going to see is kind of messed up and it references the date that's happening right now. So we're going to fix this a little later on because it requires a little trick that we're going to learn later. For now, let's actually go to our template and set these filters also inside of there. And this is something that you need to remember, that whenever you change anything inside of a specific page, like for example, let's say instead of evening reflection, you just want to call it reflection. Well, if you decided to make that change, if you just make this change here and you didn't make it inside of a template, that change is not going to propagate anywhere. So it's just going to stay local to this page. So whenever, and then when the next day is created using the same template, you're going to see evening reflection again. So if you really want to change not only this page, but all pages that are going to be created with the template in the future, you go to days, you select this arrow here and edit the template. And when you edit this one, then you can change this one. Let's call it reflection, and then add our filters here as well. Date is today. You can see it can be a little monotonous and repetitive, but this is because we were changing it inside of our pages and not inside of our template. So now our template is updated, and then all future days that are created using this template are going to have these filters and are going to have this updated text here. We've got our template. Let's close this page here, and that brings us back to our day, and we go back to our days database. We've got our 2 days, one filled with data and the other one for yesterday that's empty so far. But yet, if we go to our yesterday's day, you can see that it still has our week property. It was hidden because it was empty, so let's select property visibility and click always show. So now we can hide hidden properties and you'll still see the week. So let's add that week. Okay, good. So now we have a week that's linked to 2 days. Let's actually go into that week and start building up our reflection section. Now, what I would really like is to go to this page at the end of the week when I'm doing my weekly review and just instantly see all the days from Monday to Sunday that we're making up this week. That would be really nice. And then I would see all the pros and cons, the energy levels, all the lessons that were input in each day. And then I can do my weekly review. So let's build that. Let's hit our /view. Let's go for table view and see how it looks for now. And in this case, we want to be doing days. Okay, so we have our 2 days. And now we want to create a filter, select week, and then only filter to the days that are inside of this week. Now, these are the only 2 days, but you can see that if we, for example, select 27th and remove this property, then it goes away from this list. Let's bring this day back. Okay, let's hide this one. Now this looks really terrible. And even if we do all the right things, and let's say we go to layout and we, for example, wrap all columns, and then we can maybe hide the date because that's not really needed, that still looks like a complete mess. So how can we make this look nice? Let's try something else. Let's try a different view. Let's go to settings, layout, and let's, instead of a table layout, let's hit gallery. Okay, what is happening? We can adjust a few things. So first thing, this card preview, it's selected, page content is selected. Let's hit none. So now we only see the name property. We want to have more properties. Let's go back. Let's go to properties, and we want to be showing, we don't want to be showing the date because it's in the name, but we do want to be showing other stuff. We want to be showing the energy level for the day. We want to be showing the focus, and we want to be showing our pros, cons, and lessons. And these are already wrapping, but you can see since there's no like dividers in between them, it just looks like one blob of text. This has a hint of something that I would actually like to see, because these are nicely separated columns for all the days, but this still looks like a giant mess. But we can actually use some trickery to get some nice separators in between these properties. These separators would act as sort of like little headers. So we would have a little header for focus, then a little header for pros, for cons, and lessons. So let's go to settings, let's go to properties. Actually, we want to be also showing morning notes underneath our energy level. Then we want to be showing focus, pros, cons, and lessons. And let's add a new property, and these are going to be our dividers. In this case, we're going to pick formula. This is going to be fairly interesting. So let's call this focus divider. and then we click Added Formula. Let's use Notion's style function. Let's type style, and you can see the documentation for the style function. We hit parentheses, and in this case, we don't want to be working with any specific property. We want to be styling just the word focus. So in this case, let's make it red, and we can pass that as a second parameter. So let's see what happens. Let's click save, and now we have our little focus thing here. Let's go back here. Let's close this one, and let's pull our focus divider right above focus. This is looking better, but still not quite how I would like it to look. If we click a formula property right from this view, it's going to just pull up the formula editor right here. So let's actually start editing here. I don't want to be using red. Let's use pink. Now you can see the preview of what this is going to look like right underneath. Let's make it bold. Let's make it underline. This is already looking pretty good. Let's hit save. This is pretty nice. Let's also add a little icon to it. Let's use this one. Okay, nice. But now the problem I see is here. We don't have a focus, but we do have this divider. So I don't quite like that. So let me just Command X to cut this one, and let's use an if statement. So if there is a focus, then we want to use this one, and then if there isn't, then let's just show an empty string. So this is a very simple formula. It's an if formula. It takes 3 arguments. The first one is the condition, the second one is what to execute if the condition is true, and the third one is what to execute if the condition is false. So let's hit save, and you see that this divider right here just disappeared, which is perfect and exactly what we want. Let's keep going and add the same dividers to the other properties. So let's go to properties, and one thing we can do here is we can duplicate this property so we don't quite rewrite the formula again. Select our focus divider and hit duplicate. Drag this one down above props. This is going to be our pros divider. Let's rename this one pros divider. Let's add the formula. In this case, let's make this pros. It's not going to be pink, it's going to be green. It's for pros. Let's change the icons to this one. And let's change our if condition to pros. Good. Save. Nice. Let's go to properties. Duplicate this one again, and now let's use it for cons. Rename cons divider, added formula, cons. For cons, actually, let's use red for this one, and let's use our, what icon should I use for this one? Actually, I'm going to use a magnifying glass as well, because you don't want to be, beating yourself up over the cons, just examining them. So this is okay. We actually don't have any lessons entered here, but if we did, let's have a lessons divider for that one. So let's duplicate this property and adjust it. So it's going to be lessons divider, added formula, lessons, and let's use an icon of grad head. Actually, this seems too dark. Let's use a light bulb. Okay, and this is not going to be red. This is going to be yellow. And let's change our condition to lessons. And I think I actually forgot to do this for cons. So let's also change our condition for cons. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Now, one thing I would actually like to add, since we're just making it look a little nicer, is I'm looking at this one and it's not clear. June 28th, I kind of wanted to see, which day is like Thursday and which day is Friday. So let's add a property. Let's go to properties, add new, and this is also going to be a formula. So formula, let's call this one day, added formula, and another function that you're going to learn is format date. The date that we're going to be formatting is the date property. So if I type date and then I select this one or just hit enter, this is going to be selected, and then you can see the documentation for the formula here. So the first argument is the date, then we hit comma, and then the second argument is the format. So in this case, I'm going to pass for D's, which is going to be the full name of the day. And you can see it appears here. So if I go to our properties and drag this one all the way up, so, okay, this is looking good, except let me actually make it also style this one. So let's call style, and then let's make it bold. Good. And let's also underline this one. Save. Okay. Yeah, this is good. To make this look a little more realistic and how it would look in real life, let me actually take a few minutes and add just some mock data for the days Monday through Saturday. Don't freak out. I'm not going to be editing anything within the system. I'm just going to go and add the same kind of data for the days of the week before. This is how it looks when I've just added a few more days of data. Now, first thing you can notice is that they're not sorted in any meaningful way. So let's add a sort first. We want to sort by date. So now you can see already this works. Yeah, we want to make it ascending. So this way it goes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. This is good. Let's hide the days name of the database, and then let's rename this one to focus pros cons lessons, and let's give it some nice icon. Okay, this is better. And another thing is, in fact, I would like to have a little more separation between these points. So this is a little trick that you can use for your dividers. Let's hit this one, and just before our focus text, let's add a special character that's going to be a new line. So that's going to be \n. This is going to be a symbol for the new line. So if we hit save now, you can see that there is a line above, which kind of makes it spaced out a little bit. Let's do the same for pros, \new line. Oops. Save. And let's do the same for cons, \new line, save, and lessons. Okay, this is shaping up to be a pretty nice view for a weekly review. One thing to note is that if we hit on some day, you can see that we've added a bunch of properties that are again visible here on the top, and we don't want that. So let's go through them again and just hide them all. Hide and the day. Let's actually not hide the day. Let's move it up top. We see the date and we see the day of the week. We've done a really good job so far, and let's see what we've got. We've got our week, we've got our days database, and if we go there, this is how it looks. Looks like a complete disaster. Let's just recap something that we kind of need to work on. So we don't really have a nice view of days. We can adjust this one or create some other view. Another thing that I don't really like is our day creation flow. So let's consider how that would go. A new day comes along. Let's say it's June 28th, and we want to create that date. Now, the way that would work is we would go to the days database. We would go to new, and then we would have to pick a date. That would be June 28th. Or, yeah, oh, we already have 28th. Let's say 29th. Then we would have to link it to the current week. Then we would have to go here and type June 29, 2025. And then we open this page in full view and get to our day. Now remember that these filters are showing the current day, but we're imagining that we're doing it tomorrow on Sunday. This is slightly annoying. There is a lot of repetition. There is the setting of the date. There is the attaching of the current week, the setting of this name, and then opening the page. I think we can improve this flow. The way I kind of imagine this happening is we go to some page. In this case, this is days, but could be anything. And then there's a button to add a new date, and then the rest of the stuff that's kind of manual and repetitive just happens automatically. And here you can also see the limitation of the database type of page, because you can't add anything else to it. This is just the database. If this was a page, we could add something above the database and then have the database itself, or maybe have several databases, or maybe have a toggle for showing all the days and then have a toggle for showing all the weeks. And also you can imagine we can have even more time frames like months and quarters. So maybe it would be nice to have a single page where all of them are showed and you can have different buttons for creating new days, new weeks, etc. And another thing I would like to see on that page is just a filter for the current date and just showing me that. So I go on that page and there's immediately on top my today is shown, so I can immediately dive into that instead of going into days and having a million days displayed and I just have to click on the latest one. That's not looking very nice. So let's actually start creating that page. Let's go here on the left in our sidebar and click add page. Let's call this cycles. Let's give it a calendar icon as well. And a few sections that we're going to have here is one, we just want to have today, then we want to have all cycles, and underneath all cycles, let's do days, make this one bold, and weeks. Okay, looking good. Okay, and let's also give these background and give them some icons. Okay, let's start creating a view here. So we want to have a view that only shows the current date, the one that's happening right now. Let's search for days. Good. Table view is fine. Let's make this actually full first. And then we don't really need almost all of these properties. So let's go to properties and let's hit hide all first. Okay. And then let's actually go to filter. Date is today. Much better. We only see one. And we only need a few properties. Let's do day just to see that it's Saturday. And that's kind of all we need because we're going to be going inside of that date. Let's wrap this text property. And this is pretty good. Another thing that we want to do is, you see, if we hit this button, it opens inside Peak. And you've noticed this before. We hit it and then we have to hit Command Enter to go into the full page, or click this button here. Now I want it to be opening in full page right away. So the way I do that is going to Layout, and here you can see Open Pages In, and we can change this to full page. This is looking good. And then we can also hide the database title and rename this one to Today. And let's give this some, not say a sun. Okay, this is exactly how I want it to look. We can also let's add energy level to this one as well, just so it looks a little nicer. Okay, sweet. And let's do this. So now you can imagine this is the first page that I would open when I go into my Notion. And if there is already a day created, then I just hit this button and I'm off to the races. Let's say I'm doing my evening reflections. I'm done. I didn't have to see a bunch of days. I only went to this page and saw this day and opened it. So this is nice. Let's get to the creation of the days view. We already have a very nice view of the days that we've created inside of our week. So if we open the weeks in another tab, let's go there. Let's open this one. And this is kind of a nice view. So let's just use that. Let's hit Command C to copy this one. We can close this page, go here and paste it. The only thing that we really need to change is here. We don't really need a filter for that specific week, so we can remove this filter altogether. Delete. And the sorting in this case is done from earliest date to latest date, because that makes sense for the weekly display. In this case, we want to be showing the latest day first. So let's change the sorting from ascending to descending. And the next thing that we would like to do is just to have a limit on how many items are loaded here. And this is another advantage of having a view of a database instead of a database page. So let me just show you this. If I go to settings, there is a load limit, which by default is 50, and let's make it to 10. We don't really need to be looking at a lot of days. And so if I close this one down and if I go to days database and I go to settings, you can see that there is no way to limit how many items are being loaded. So of course there is some inherent limitation for how many items Notion loads in a database at once. But still, if you just went to this page, a bunch of days would be loaded, and you can't really control that. But if you have a page and you have a database view, you toggle this one, and then you're going to see only the latest 10 days. And the last thing that I would like to do in this page, before we actually work on the display of our weeks, let's create another section. Let's duplicate this one, drag it down. Nice. And let's move our databases underneath this section, because right now we have our cycles page and then we have days and weeks. Now we don't really need these pages here. So let's just create something that we are not going to see. Let's do a toggle list, call it databases, and we can take these pages and just drag them in here. Nice. So now our sidebar is very clean. We just have cycles, and then this is the only page that we're going to be going to. If we want to see our weeks, they're going to be here. We want to see our days that are past, they're going to be here. And then the most important part is that we're going to be seeing our today. Now we can even hide this sidebar so we can have more space. You can click this button here, or you can click Command \, and now it's gone. So now we have a very nice clean view. So we were trying to add a button that would be creating the days for us. So let's do that. Let's click / and type button, and this is going to be creating a new button. So let's call this launch a new day, and let's pick an icon of, let's do an emoji of rocket. Okay, good. So now you see this is an empty button. This is why there is a warning, because it doesn't do anything now. But our plan is so it creates a new day for us, sets the day, links it to an appropriate week, which is the current week, and also generates a name based on a date. So let's do that. This is going to be super convenient, and also is going to teach you how to use macro buttons, which is a great feature in Notion, and we're going to learn it by actually building something useful. So let's hit our cog icon and go into the button config. Now you can see you can be adding some actions. So let's hit new action. First, we want to be adding a new page. So let's hit add new page, which is our default template. And then we want to be editing a property called name. So the property, we want to be basing it on the current date. You can see this one is just text by default, but you can click this button here and create it as a formula. So what we want is to use our format date function. As the first argument, let's just pass it date triggered. So let's click this one. And for the second argument, we want to have the formatting. So you can see even it suggests this is exactly the format that we want actually. So let's do end year. And in fact, let's make it, yeah, this one is good. So let's hit save. Next, let's also set the date property. This is going to be super easy. So we just hit the property that we want to add it as date, and then we want to select date triggered. Good. So now we're both setting the name of the property. We're both setting the name property and the date property. So actually we can test this now. Let's hit done, and then let's test our button. We hit it, and you see that it works perfectly. So if we open this, we can see the date was set. It's Saturday, and the name was set also right. This is good. The only thing left is to set the week. So let's go back. I can hit this button here or command left square bracket. And then we can actually delete this entry. I can click this checkbox and hit delete. This one is gone. And let's edit our button to add the final thing. So we want to add that as a separate action. And let's edit pages. And we want to be editing a week. So let's select weeks. And instead of editing all pages in weeks, we want to select only the current week. So let's say where start date is this week. Perfect. Let's hit here. And the property that we want to be editing is days. And we want to add page edit. So basically we're editing a page in the weeks database that fulfills this condition, which is the pages that were created this week. I mean, not created, but the start date is this week. And then we are editing a day's property and adding a new page that we added to that week. And then let's do another thing. Let's just open the page that we just added, and then open it in full page. So instead of just creating the page here and then hitting the open, when we're launching a day, we're just going to hit the button. It's going to create the page, set the name, set the current date, and it's also going to open the page in full view just for us. So let's test this out. Let's hit the button and everything works. Yes, even the week was set. So now we're really good. Okay, so actually we don't need this one. Let's delete this page and we're back to our days. Let's go to cycles and let's solve an issue that we raised before. So if we go to our days and we go to any day that's in the past, let's say even Friday, it's not uncommon for you to want to review your past days. Let's actually modify this view to also open pages in full page right away. Okay, so let's say I want to examine my Friday. I go there and the filters are set up in a way that only show the current date, which means if I'm trying to review this day on Saturday and it's Friday in this day, then all the filters are going to be messed up. I can still see the properties here. By the way, let me just hide this one. I can see the properties here. I can toggle this one and see everything, that was entered on Friday. So you can see that the pros here are different than they're here because this filter is also wrong. But I don't want to be looking at them here. I actually want these filters to be showing the right day. So if I go to a past day, they show me that date. And if I look at the today's day, they show me the today's items. There's no really nice way of doing that in Notion, but one workaround that actually works pretty well is we can add a specific property to this day that's going to reference this specific page. So let's add a relation. We can add a relation to days. It's going to be this database, which is days. It's going to be only one page and it's not going to be a two-way relation. So it's just going to be pointing to this day. Let's call this page just to be quite explicit. And our goal is to have it just reference this specific page. So we can, if this is June 27th, this would be referencing like this. Then we're going to obviously automate the setting of this property so you don't have to set it manually. You don't have to do any of that. So let's actually even set visibility to hidden right away and hide the properties. So now it's kind of gone. It's out of sight, out of mind. But now when we are doing our filtering, instead of filtering by date, what we can do is add another filter and filter by this page. And then if we add June 27th, you can see that if we remove this one, then now it's showing the right data that's actually from Friday and not just the day that we're looking at it. Let's do the same here. So let's remove this filter and add another filter, this page, June 27th. So this is cool, but I said you're not going to be manually setting that property. So how do we do that? Well, we already have the mechanism for that. If we go to our cycles, we have our launch new day button. So what we can simply do is add a new action, edit pages, the page that we just added, and we can set this page property, replace it with page added. Done. That's it. New day, we hit launch new day, and everything happens automatically. So now you're going to see that this property is just set. The only thing that's left to do is to update the filters inside of our template. So let's go to our days and edit our daily template. So let's go there. And the filters now are going to be not by date, but by this page. And here, there's some more Notion magic. You can pick new page, which is our template. So obviously, there's not going to be any data here, but when we create that page, you're going to see that it filters to itself. So let's remove this one, filter. This page is new page, and we are good. Let's go to cycles and test the whole thing again. Let's remove this empty one and let's test our button. Let's hit launch new day, and very good. You can see that now it references specifically this page. So you don't see another June 28th that we have here. We only see this page, which is exactly what we wanted, and there's no data. Perfect. We can even update the June 28th entry that has data with the same template. So let's remove this empty one. Let's go here. And here, one thing you can do is just hit Command A to select everything. Just remove the whole thing and reapply the template again. And now you can see that there is no data because, in fact, this day wasn't created with that macro button. So the this page property isn't set. But if we do set it, then it's going to instantly work. And of course, it's going to work for all the future days that we're going to be creating. So let's go back to cycles. We have our nice view of days. Let's toggle this one. The only thing that we're really lacking is a nice view of weeks. And let's actually go to our example weeks. So if I go to the day and I go to our week, you can see that it doesn't have a lot of properties. So far, the only thing that we're setting is the focus, and our reflection consists of just looking at the past days. Now, this is nice, but why not have the same pros and cons and lessons that we had on the days, but also on the weekly entity? Because you can easily imagine having months that will be displaying all the underlying weeks and quarters and so on. So why not have the same structure for the weeks that we have for the days? And then in our cycles, we can have this nice view that will be very similar, showing all the weeks in our life by focus and lessons. And then here we can have a really nice display of our weeks. Let's create a view right here, actually. We know it's going to be a gallery view, and we know it's going to be of weeks. Good. So now it's kind of a placeholder, doesn't have any properties, but let's adjust that. So layout, hide database title. Let's also call it thing like or let's call it summaries. It's going to be summaries. Good. And let's adjust the properties. We do want to show the focus. And following the template from the days, we actually know what we need. We need the pros, cons, lessons, and we also need our handy dandy dividers. So let's just add that. Let's do text pros. Good. Duplicate. Properties. That would be cons. Duplicate. And lessons. And let's set the icons in the same fashion. Good. And then let's just completely steal our dividers from the days. Let's take this one, select Command A, Command C to copy, and then let's just add a new property, formula. That would be focus divider. Bam. Paste, and it just works. Good. Let's do the same for pros. Copy, new property, formula, pros divider, edit, paste, done. Cons, new property, formula, cons divider, done. And let's finally do lessons for the last one. Property, formula, lessons, divider. Good. Now let's arrange them a little bit. So properties, we actually want to have focus divider, then focus, then pros divider, pros, cons divider, lessons. Very good. And the last thing that we want to do for this view is go to layout and select wrap all properties. Okay, so now this is looking already pretty nice. Actually, the next thing that we want to do is go to this week and adjust the template. So let's go to our reflection section. So now we want to be setting the focus when it comes to planning, but then in the reflection, we want to be adding our pros, cons, and lessons. So let's add that. To get started, we'll just copy this view. So let's say copy, paste here. Instead of weekly planning, let's call it weekly pros, cons, lessons. Good. And let's change an icon to a pencil. And then the properties, we don't need this one, hide, but we do need our pros, cons, and lessons. Okay, let's make these slightly wider. And actually, I would like to add a little note. Let's drag this one here. And let's do /callout. So the icon I want to use for this is arrow down and pick, let's make it orange. Okay. And let me just say add pros and cons from, and let me just put this text here. So we want to add any pros and cons from days that hold weekly significance. The next thing that we want to do is extract any lessons from the information above, expanding on the learnings. So this just gives me some nice direction when I'm doing my weekly review. And let me just input some text here so you can see how it would look. So here we can wrap text, and we want to wrap text everywhere. And let's just say these were our pros, these were our cons for the week, and some lessons. So these we derive exactly from the pros and cons here, except we remove some ones that, just don't really matter on the weekly time frame. And actually another property that I like adding to weeks and cycles higher is a property called summary. So once you've added all your pros, cons, and lessons for the week, I also like having a summary that is kind of just 7 to 12 bullet points that really encapsulate the essence of a cycle. So let's add that. First, let's start by doing a call out and adding a little note. So we want to create a shorter version of pros, cons, and lessons to quickly capture the essence of the week. So, and let's have the same view. So let's copy this one here, except for properties, we're going to have a new property called summary. It's going to be called summary, and let's just use this icon here, and we also are going to wrap text, make it wider, and let's imagine this would be the summary for this week. Now let's go back to our cycles and see how that would look. So this is our weeks, and in fact, now when I think about it, I would actually show the summary. Instead of showing all the pros, cons, and lessons, I would only have a summary. So let's hide these ones. I would have focus for sure, but here I would hide these and instead just show the summary and have a divider for that. Let's duplicate this one, go to properties, summary, and let's call this summary divider. Let's also make it green, summary, and give it a different icon. Save. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Now, instead of having a bunch of data, we just have a summary that encapsulates the essence of the week. Another thing I like doing for the weeks, if we go back to our week, is actually picking an image that represents that week. So then when we see it in cycles, instead of just having text here, we can actually see some visual representation of a week. I don't do it for days because it's just too small of a cycle, but for weeks, months, and quarters and years, you can absolutely spend 30 seconds picking an image that will visually represent that cycle. So let's go back to the week. And the way that can work is you can add it right here as a cover. So let's hit cover, and it automatically adds a random image, but then you can change it here, and you can either upload your own image, link to some image, or you can even use Unsplash, which is really nice. So let's actually see. If we go here, this is our summary for the week. So we've worked on an email onboarding, we've got some clarity from a supplier, we worked on the homepage. So let's say our biggest highlight for the week was this one, that we got alignment with our Ethiopian supplier of coffee. So let's just go here, click change cover, Unsplash, and let's search for something like Chemex, just to have a nice view of maybe us testing the coffee from that supplier. So let's just hit this one. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. If we go to our cycles, we can actually go to settings, layout, and here for card preview, instead of none, we can change it to page cover. Okay, this is now looking pretty nice. We can go to card size, and instead of medium, change it to large. Okay, so this is now, it's a nice view of the week. You can imagine that reviewing a collection of weeks in this format will be really, really informative when you're doing your monthly or quarterly review. Let's now go back to our weekly layout, and let's just add another little call out, an arrow up, and add this text as just a reminder to set the image for the week and celebrate our wins. We have a pretty good template almost ready for the weeks. One thing I would actually do is I want to see this kind of view of how our week is shaping up, but with more details right inside of this template. So the way I would do it is, let's first hide these properties because they're kind of annoying right here. We don't want to see any of these properties here. So let's change to always hide these. We've added a bunch, but they're not necessary here. Date is fine, but we don't need the rest. Even the days, we don't really need to see them because we're going to see them down. But here's how I would change this layout that we have here so we can immediately see how our weekly card is shaping up to look. This is also going to be an important lesson in Notion, is the multi-column layout. So instead of having just everything top to bottom, you can place things side by side. So let's do 2-column. Now it seems like nothing happened, but if you actually highlight this block, you can see that there are 2 blocks. So let's place this kind of view. Let's copy this database here, adjust this width. Okay, this is good. And then we're gonna drag and select everything here, grab this one and put everything here. Okay, this is much better, except let's make some adjustments. So on the cycles page, I only wanted to see the focus and the summary, but when we're inside, I want to see more details. Cons, lessons, and then finally we want to see our summary. Okay, now this is looking really nice for the summary. And here, I want to make a slight adjustment here when we are seeing reflection of all our days. Let's go to layout and let's make this card preview, not card preview, card size. Let's change it to small so everything fits in one window, even if we have all the 7 days. Okay, now this is looking really good. We have our planning with the focus setting. All our properties that are shown here are clean and nothing useless there. We see all of our days, and then when we're working on this, we can immediately see how our weekly summary will shape up to look. The only thing left now is to set a filter for this one as well, and we can use the same trick we used for days, where we filter not by date, but by this page property. So let's actually use this trick. Let's add a new property. Let's also make it a relation. 2 weeks, call it this page, and it's going to be have a limit of page 1, and let's add this relation. Okay, so it's called this page, and now we're going to select it manually, but also we're going to have a button that creates weeks, because we can go to cycles, and similar to the way we were creating launching a new day, now we can go here and create a button that would be launch a new week. Let's also pick the rocket emoji. Nice. And let's pick an action at page 2 weeks. Now it doesn't have a template, but we'll create it soon. Now we do want to add this page property, but you see you can't select the page added until you actually edit. So first, let's remove this one. We want to actually do it as a separate step. First, we add the page, then we added the page that we just added. And let's now do this one. Replace with page added. Good, and let's just add another action for opening the page. Full page. Done. So now we can test this out. We hit launch new week, and now you can see that if I type something here, this is the page. Except we don't have a template, but now we're all set and ready for creating our weekly template. So let's remove this one, and let's go in our weeks, and let's hit new template. So let's go here, because this is going to be our base for the template. Let's add the filter by this page. Good. Let's highlight everything. And let's move this to the weeks template. Let's make it full width. Nice. Hide these properties. And let's adjust the filter to, instead of that specific week, look at the template, and let's do the same for these properties here. So this page equals new page. Good. And here as well, we're going to be filtering. Nice. And also here, new page. And here. And we're all set. Our weekly template is complete. Let's go to cycles, and we're almost done. Let's add our button now and go to the template and select our new page, and done. So when we hit launch new week, you can see that it launches with our new template. One thing that I would like to do is let's remove this page, move to trash, and let's edit this template. Let's actually make it default first, set as default, good. But then also let's edit it, and let's add some default, let's add the default icon, and let's also add the default cover. So let's add this one. And I'm gonna use a file I have, because I think it looks pretty nice. I'm just gonna drag it here. So yeah, this is good. Let's see how it looks when it's a gallery view. So let's hit launch a new week. Nice. And this is the icon that we're gonna have before we set hours at the end of the week. So this is looking good. And let's imagine that we're creating it for the next week. Let's say from June 30th to July 6th. We set the dates, and then let's manually give it a name. We can actually also do a similar thing we did with days and set the days and the name automatically, but I think this is going to be a little too much for this tutorial, so let's just set this manually. July 6, 2025. Very good. Let's go back to our cycles and see how this looks. I think this looks pretty good. So we've got everything. We've got our launch buttons for the day, for the week. We've got our templates. This is looking nice. Let's actually do some recap. Let me collapse this one. And let's just think about everything that we've done in this video and everything that we've learned. because it's pretty crazy how much of Notion you've learned in just one video, and you've also built something that's truly useful. So let's go through the list. You've learned how to create pages in Notion. You've learned how to create databases. You've learned about various views of databases like a table view and a gallery view and how to create them. You've also learned how to link databases together, which is a pretty advanced topic of creating relations between properties. We've also created all kinds of properties and fields on our databases. We've seen even complicated properties like roll-up properties to see our weekly focus on the days. We've also created some sweet formulas to help us display data in a more beautiful way. We've been creating and editing a bunch of templates. So we've created one for the day and for the week. We've also made them look nice using column layouts and different callouts and headers and toggles and so on. We've also learned how to sort and filter data, including some really cool filtering techniques to make sure your templates always filter to the current time frame. We've seen different ways of changing cover photos as well as icons, and we've even created macro buttons, which is really advanced, and we've used them to automate some repeated manual tasks. And we've also learned some useful keyboard shortcuts. So there's been a lot. I'm probably now like blanking on quite a few things that we also learned, but we did cover a lot of ground. But most importantly, if you think about it, what we've actually built is a system that is at the foundations of all personal development. If you follow it, you're going to be planning your days. You're going to be very specific with your focus and target only high priority items. You're going to reflect on the days and draw lessons from it. You're going to do weekly planning and narrow your focus. You're going to make sure your daily execution is aligned with your weekly goals. You're also going to notice how you feel each day and then be able to notice patterns on a weekly review. You're actually going to do weekly reviews to recap all the lessons and actions you did in a week, and you're going to summarize those results so they can be reviewed at even larger and higher time frames like months, quarters, and years. And you're also going to celebrate your wins and remind yourself of all the small steps you're taking towards your larger goals. I think just following these rituals of planning and reviewing your days and weeks will take you surprisingly far. There is no need for more complex systems if this is what you need right now. Oftentimes, adding more complexity to your system brings more harm than good. I believe the system we've built together today is actually super robust and can be super useful to all kinds of people. So don't forget to get your completely free template of everything that we've covered today down below. And if you're wondering where you can go from here, I would suggest adding some tracking of key health metrics in your morning data. You can also start tracking some of your key habits during the day and at the review part of the day. And you can also start adding some tasks or actions database so you can schedule your tasks right inside of Notion. And of course, what makes a lot of sense is just to grow this system beyond the weeks. So once you get comfortable with days and weeks, you can definitely add months and quarters and years and even larger time frames to this system. If you're interested in this stuff and want to learn more, you can definitely watch more videos on my channel. This is what it's all about. And if you need more help, you can click the link in the description. But I hope this video was at least somewhat useful to you, and I wish you all the luck in your life optimization journey. See you in other videos.